Welcome to Electric Vitality Unplug with your health coach, Christina Leo. Join us each week as we explore strategies with antioxidant negative ions to keep our bioelectric body strong, ensuring a vibrant and dignified life well into our golden years. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Electric Vitality Unplug, Episode 7. This is the fourth installment of the August Health Series where we explore the negative ion benefits. So let me get started. I'm very excited about today's topic, which is regulating our autonomic nervous system. And it sounds like a little bit of a mouthful there, but I hope by the end of the session, you will understand what ANS is and why it is so important that we keep it balanced to reduce our to keep us in balance actually, and so that your health should be, would be better. Okay, so let's proceed. And general disclaimer, as always, all the information is provided for your information purposes only. So if you have your existing health condition, please always work with your licensed healthcare professionals. And as part of transparency, I am an authorized independent distributor of NEFO USA, and I have been proudly with them for over 15 years. About myself, I am a marketing leader at the AGM level with NEFO USA, and I am also a meditation instructor. And I'm passionate about keeping myself, my family, and those that I know as healthy as possible. And we're talking about from physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because all of those has a direct impact on how we live our life. And my mission is to share what I have learned and will learn in my pursuit to get my PhD in natural medicine, and so that I can empower you to live a long and healthy life into your golden years. Okay. And so this is the last installment of the health series, and I will publish the September topics probably next week or the week after. Okay. And so the source of information comes from these books, where Anion is written by the Energetic Association of, I guess he's a secretary or, an official of the Energetic Association of Taiwan. And I rely on the translation, the Where Anion book, to produce the content, and also from research on on the web as well. And I highly encourage you, if you are unsure or not really sure about what the details of what I present, just go ahead and Google and using the keywords, because the web has a lot of information. And I highly advise you to also try out the AI ChatGPT or any other AI programs that actually could give you even more in-depth answers as well. But just be mindful too, the information from AI generated apps is actually, sometimes it's you have to be careful, right? But in general, what we're learning here are general knowledge, so it should be okay. So let's talk about what is ANS. ANS stands for Autonomic Nervous System. So it's part of our nervous system, because we also have a central nervous system. But this ANS is basically functions of our nervous system that operates automatically without you thinking, without you have to consciously control it. So the easiest way to think about it is your heartbeat, right? You won't be able to tell your heartbeat to, hey, beat faster or beat slower, right? Or your breathing, right? We just breathe unconsciously as part of our bodily function. So the role of ANS is actually to maintain what we call homeostasis, which is internal stability, right? We want our body to be stable and healthy. And the way the body respond to internal or external stimuli is it causes it will adjust the body function for that. Okay. So most organs within our body are controlled by the ANS. So the ANS, right, now that we kind of narrowed down to the autonomic nervous system, what it is, basically comprises of two portions. One is what we call the SNS, which is the sympathetic nervous system. The other one is the parasympathetic nervous system. So the easier way to remember them is one is active because it's the fight or flight response. So when we are kind of faced with, let's say, a stressful situation or an emergency situation, our sympathetic nervous system kind of kick into high gear, right? And then it goes into this fight. Okay, either I fight or I run from it, right? Because it's a survival instinct. And the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system, is responsible for rest and digest. So what it does is it promotes relaxation and recovery by slowing down our bodily processes. So another easy way to remember is during the daytime, we're active. So typically the SNS is in an active phase, and it kind of takes control. But as we start to wind down, let's say coming back home from work and then started in the evening, we start to slow down. Our bodies start to go into a slower operation and getting ready to, rest and then go to sleep. So then our body could restore energy. Okay. So don't worry too much about this. It looks like it's a lot of details, but basically the central portion, right? It's really just showing the brain and then the spinal cord, because majority of our organs are associated with the ANS. So when we're in the sympathetic activity, so for example, as I say, your heart rate increases, right? Your pupil dilates, right? And then your activity with the digestive system, it basically kind of inhibits the digestive system, and it inhibits some of the activities in the pancreas and the gallbladder. But don't get too hung up on this, but remember the important thing is that this is the active phase, right? And then the SNS actually consumes energy. So when we take in energy through food that we take, or different ways of increasing our energy, the SNS actually uses up this energy, right? And it's tend to be active during the daytime. The PNS is the opposite, right? And then what it does, it restores the energy that has been consumed, and it's active during nighttime. So when we go to sleep, we start to restore our energy. That's when the PNS start to kick in. Okay. So these two systems, they kind of serve in a rhythmic pattern. So, it's kind of like, ebbs and flow between the two, the night and day, etc. Right? So, we have a rhythm to our daily lives. But imagine if you're out of balance, right? So let's say you stay up several nights, to work through a work project. Now you're in, excessive active phase. And then by the time you want to relax, because you're so out of balance, it's hard to go back to that relaxation. So that's the challenge. So, the imbalance will lead to poor health. Okay. So, and these are what I list here are some of the very common conditions when you have an imbalance in your ANS. So if you have poor digestion, if you suffer from anxiety, okay, you have constipation, you breathe really shallow, and your heart rate constantly increases, you have poor sleep quality, you're oftentimes restless, and you experience fatigue a lot, and your body have an increase in inflammation, and you get cold or get sick very often. So those are all examples when your body start to have an imbalance in the ANS that leads to these conditions. So one of the biggest thing that I like to kind of emphasize is the amount of stress that our modern lifestyle causes us. So stress actually contributes directly and indirectly about 60 to 80% of all illnesses and diseases. And the stress, what it does, it keep us in this fight or flight SNS state all the time. And just imagine that you're constantly, in a tense state, and then you never get the opportunity to relax and then to restore all that energy that's been consumed, right? So we have to really be mindful of the amount of stress in our lives, and then take proactive action to alleviate it. So how does anion or negative ion actually help us, right? So what it can do is anion actually can reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system, which tend to go into a hyperdrive when you have too much exposure to cations or what we call positive ion, right? Or the buildup of free radical within our body. And the amnion actually has the effect of increase the parasympathetic nervous system. So it does it through three major areas, but it all has to do with how our nerve cell, remember we're talking about nervous system. So the nervous system also is comprised of cells. Remember we talked about cells makes up the component of every single part of our body. So in the nervous system, the key component is a nerve cell. So how amnion can help is it does it three ways, and I'll go into more details, which is increase the nerve cells sensitivity. So and it keeps sodium potassium channels open. And if you can recall, I had done the presentation on that regarding the sodium potassium pump. And then it also increases blood calcium concentration, so that it will increase the conduction between the neurons. And the last thing is that it increases what we call alpha brain waves. So by doing that, it allows us to get into a more parasympathetic state. Okay, so let me get to a little more detail on that. So when we talk about cells, right? Remember the first episode I talked about activating and strengthening the cells. So the cells within the nervous systems are nerve cells. So nerve cell looks a little bit different than other cells, right? It's because the other cell, let's say, just simplifying, it's like circular, right? But a nerve cell actually had it has like a long strand, and then at the end, the two ends actually are the ones that communicate, right? It takes signals, right? And then it transmit to the next neuron. Okay, so that's what it does. Like if you were taking a look at the structure here, which is the one neuron, and then you see at the end of it, it connects with the second neuron on the right. So then it kind of transmits signals. That's how our nerve system works, right? And in a kind of like a larger point of view is that, let's say if your finger gets a prick, right? And then how do you know that you actually got a prick, right? And then it could hurt, right? So it starts with the sensory, right, at the finger. And then it actually, these neuron actually like connects, right? And then it travels through from your, with each neuron connecting and then going through your spinal cord and then goes up to your brain. And then your brain consciously says, oh, goodness, my finger has been pricked and it's hurting. And then it sends another signal down, right? Down to back to the finger. And then it could be like taking a proactive action to, let's say, to cover up with the bandage or something, right? So the conscious brain, it's kind of giving the action, right? It giving the command to say, okay, let's do something about this. But then this example basically shows like anytime we have any kind of stimuli, the nervous system, the nerve cells is doing all of this activity to communicate to our brain, and then our brain takes action, right? So the nerve conduction is very, very important. So don't get scared by this, because this actually I had presented this in, I think in the one about uh the key to keeping our cells activated and healthy, right? Because um this our cell has these what we call sodium potassium pump, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but it basically opens and close, and the sodium and potassium ion, it kind of goes in and out, in and out. So for it to work well, right, it has a natural process of going in and out. And the cell membrane has to be very permeable for it to work well, right? So when we have too much free radical, it will cause these channels to not work properly, okay? So that's why when we have negative ion or anion exposure, we allow the electrical charge to be normalized. So so that the pump will open and close, effectively. So, but then the main thing in relation to the nerve cell is that, when these things work well, it increases the nerve sensitivity. And so, in other words, it will increase the transmission of the signal from each nerve cell, right, to be more sensitive and faster. So imagine like as we get older, right? And then oftentimes we hear elderly falling, and it's hard for them to get up. But how did they even fall in the first place, right? That's because their reaction time has slowed down. Their nerve conduction, as the cells age, the nerve conduction isn't as effective. So when they fall, they couldn't brace their fall. So if you look at a kid, right, a kid falls, and then they immediately are able to respond quickly and brace the fall. Whereas an elderly will fall and then fractures the hip, right? That's because as they age, these nerve cell conduction become less and less effective. So if we want to stay healthy, we want to make sure our nerve conduction stays healthy. And a lot of health condition also results from lack of, an effective nerve conduction. So a negative ion has an effect on the sodium potassium pump, which has an effect on the sensitivity of the nerves. And then the second one is I also had talked about calcium ion in the previous session, where our blood actually has calcium ion, and then it needs to maintain at 4 milligram. And then when it starts to drop down to 2.5, we start to have issue with the cell. Okay, so nerve cells are cells, right? So it will have the similar kind of response or effect from the change in the calcium ion level. So negative ion, when you have exposure to it, will help bring this balance back into the blood, going back from, let's say, from 2.5 back to 4 milligram. So why is calcium important? Because the calcium is important because in our nerve cells, right? So if you look at the nerve cell that I kind of in the middle here, let me see if I could point. Okay, here. Okay, this is the nerve cell, and this is just kind of enlarged photo of it. Okay, so there's these little round things, right? These are what they call vesicles. Vesicle kind of carry like the chemical messages, right? So when the nerves conduct, right, these vesicle carry the messengers, right, and then it will release it from one to the other to tell it what to do, right? So these vesicle actually requires calcium. So because these things move, right? So the movement requires calcium. So when your calcium ion is low, it's going to reduce the effectiveness of the messages from these round balls, right, from being released. So when it's not being released, so for example, let's say you fall, right, and then let's say the brain is receiving the message very slow because the nerve conduction isn't there, because these messengers are not coming through, right? So it'll take them like maybe a little while to say, oh, I've fallen, I need to get up, right? versus a little kid, they fall and then immediately they're like, well, I've fallen, I better get up, right? So it's that transmission of the message, right, from one to the other will be effective. And calcium is necessary for these round ball that carry these messages to move efficiently. So when we get our blood calcium level to the right level, our nerve conduction will increase, and then we will be able to respond or react better and faster. Okay. And then the last but not least is that the anion actually can increase our alpha waves. Okay, so there was a study that was done by this professor at this university in Japan, and they found that the alpha wave increases when the subject being tested like inhale a good amount of negative ions. Okay, so let me just explain a little bit about brainwave, because our brain exhibit all these brain waves, right? And then so there's basically four major category. Beta is when we're active, our brainwave will be more active. Alpha is when we start to relax, we start to calm, and then if you meditate, we'll go into this alpha state. And then theta is slowing down even further, right? Going to deeper relaxation. And when we go to sleep, our brainwave is in the delta wave. So when we have exposure to negative ions, it has this effect on the alpha wave. And that's what I mentioned about the testing, because it brings your body to a relaxed and calm state, which is the parasympathetic state, to balance out the hyperactive phase of sympathetic state. Okay, so kind of in a summary, the anions or negative ion has an effect on our parasympathetic nervous system, whereas cation or positive ion or free radical has an effect on our sympathetic nervous system. So as you can see, when I started the kind of the health series in the first week, I kind of talked about different, one per each week. But in essence, the anion benefit to our body, actually, these four major benefits, they all connect together. They're not separate from each one, because our body is our body, right? So all of the system and all of the components in our body has a direct impact, and they're all connected with each other. So when we purify our blood, it also has an effect on regulating our autonomic nervous system. Also has an effect on when we rejuvenate our cells, the cells also strengthen the nervous system cells, also strengthen the red blood cells, right? Also strengthen the immune cells, right? So our immune system also gets stronger. So all of these four major functions of what anions can do for our body actually has a tremendous impact in how we can stay healthy and how we can combat the sources of all these free radical or pollutant that comes into our body, because we can neutralize it. And how we can neutralize it is through these four major areas. So the neuron, which is the negative ion fiber from nephil, basically could generate a significant amount of static electricity, and then it combines with oxygen in the air, forms negative ion that we breathe in or we absorb through our skin, goes straight into our body and give us all the benefit that our electrical body and physical body actually needs, by boosting the cellular function, by giving it the proper voltage. Okay. And from the covering with the bedding to wearing the clothes, covering all the areas that our skin can touch the product, allows the opportunity for all of these negative charges to go straight into our body and do all the wonderful things that we talked about here. Okay, so I will wrap up the presentation there, and if any part is confusing, please do go back and review it. You could watch it over and over again, and then go ahead and do some, chat GPT prompt to say, hey, explain to me what is autonomic nervous system, and it'll give you really, really good answers, because the AI could kind of tailor to your specific question that you don't, that you might not understand and it pulls all this information from the web to make it more streamlined for you. Okay. So that's what I want to encourage you to do. And I'll wrap up the presentation here.